there was never a video game curse. They were just bad producers who didn't play or respect or appreciate games.
Dmitri M. Johnson and Mike Goldberg, co-founders of Story Kitchen, specializing in the adaptation of video games into film.
The types of games that get my attention are things that make me feel. But in the end, getting movies and TV shows made, it's hard. It's really hard.
Hollywood asked us, who else is in your space? And the answer is nobody.
They agreed to give us a shot, and that was the start of about a 10-year journey to get Sonic to the big screen.
The video game adaptation space continues exceeding expectations as it has been since Sonic 1. We can be part of the continued momentum to cross over games into Hollywood. I believe this is just getting started.
So for those that don't know, we had a little introductory call maybe a week or so ago, kind of led to this. Yeah, I'm super excited for this conversation because obviously you guys are doing some ridiculously good work. But before we dive into those elements, let's have a little intro into who you are, what you do and why.
Sure. So I am Mike Goldberg, co-founder of Story Kitchen with Dmitri M. Johnson, who is here with me, co-founder of Story Kitchen. And we specialize in sourcing and adapting non-traditional intellectual property, more specifically video game intellectual property, into film and TV at the highest level. And we launched the company 2.5 years ago. So we're a young entertainment startup, but we've been doing this a long time. And we built this off of Dimitri's production company, DJ2 Entertainment, that he launched 17 years ago. So we had a head start and a lot of shortcuts to bring fruit into the machine.
If anybody's taken a look at your website, you've gone for everything from Sonic the Hedgehog to Split Fiction to Tomb Raider, and a classic of mine, or two classics of mine, Streets of Rage and Toe Jam and Earl. What was the original spark that led to Story Kitchen, and what was the problem you were trying to solve?
The spark for Story Kitchen really was, Mike was our agent for many years doing the work of a co-producer. He was doing things that you wouldn't typically find with an agent, digging in, giving fantastic notes, really weighing in on packaging ideas. And finally, just as a friend, I'm like, dude, while I appreciate having you as a wonderful agent, as your friend, I just want to tell you, you're doing the job of a producer, but you're not getting the money or the credit or the fame that comes along with that. Oftentimes, you're not even listed in press releases that you play a major role in helping us close. Have you thought about coming to the dark side? And, what kind of started as a bit of a joke became a more serious conversation as time went on. And I would say, really, there's not a huge difference from what we were doing with DJ2, other than Mike is now on this side of it and really on the day-to-day grind of everything that we were trying to do at DJ2, which was just, proving our thesis that there was never a video game curse. They were just bad producers who didn't play or respect or appreciate games, sometimes picking the wrong IP, and we got adaptations because of that. And we believed that if you put the village together in a smart way, we could prove that that was all incorrect. And just like any other source material, be it a New York Times bestseller or an original spec script, it was really about story and character and world. And you put those things together and you see that the current run that we're witnessing with game adaptations right now.
Usually the majority or the super majority of executives in Hollywood and linear TV and film entertainment start as an agent, then they become a manager, and then they become a producer, either on purpose or by accident. But I went manager, then agent, then producer. And the reason behind it is while I enjoyed working with many of my clients, and I had some clients whose work I was unbelievably proud of, watching and working with Dmitri and the DJ2 team, like, you're not supposed to have a favorite. Like, I kind of had a favorite. And it became so interesting and quasi-insane where I was inadvertently spending a good portion of my agent workdays just building out with Dmitri and his teammates, his business, that it just became a thing where I'm like, ooh, this is too exciting to look away. What is the other direction? And to now answer that question of what are we solving for, it's funny, we had a coffee yesterday with a potential international partner. And they asked us, like who else is in your space? What's essentially your competitive advantage? And the answer is nobody in Hollywood myopically focuses on video game adaptations. Yes, some come in and out of it. Jerry Bruckheimer with Prince of Persia, Neil Moritz, obviously with Sonic alongside Dmitri, but that's not their core business. It's dissimilar to where Jason Blum's core business is horror, or under Blumhouse, or Basil Iwanek with Thunder Road's core business is action. No one built an authentic core business and focus around this space, except for what Dmitri was doing with DJ2. So we wanted to do more of it. We wanted to be louder about it, and we do it at a very high touch premium.
You touched on Sonic there. Obviously, that's one of the things that's helped blow open the doors to this so-called curse that never really existed. So in that regards, let's maybe walk through how that came into reality, and also what pulls you towards a particular IP and what makes you say, yeah, this deserves to have a wider universe and a wider opportunity.
I mean, Sonic fits into a theme that's true for us to this day, which is coming from a place of passion. You know, we were Sega kids, you know, obviously Nintendo kids before that, but I feel like we kind of aged with the systems, whereas we were preteens, teens, and getting into edgier things. Sonic was kind of that answer to what Mario was when we were younger, which was the edgier version of that mascot. So when we started looking, you know, what would be a great IP to, you know, try to go out and prove the thesis with, we knew it had to be a big enough IP that it would get Hollywood's attention, while also knowing that because of the disastrous first Super Mario movie, Nintendo wasn't really going to be an option. And when you really look at the iconic IP that was out there at the time, you're talking Mario, you're talking Sonic. And around that time, good friend Toby Asher, who was working with Neil Moritz over at Original, we had kind of talked about what we could team up on as two very young producers trying to make our mark. And we both shared a love for Sonic and decided to go after it. And I was very fortunate to be taking a trip to South Korea, where I was doing a talk at that time on the idea that game adaptations could work, and being very much in the fake it till you make it mode. Definitely took advantage of my friends in the South Korea government flying me over to jump over to Japan from there, which was much cheaper than doing it from LA, and ended up meeting in real life for the first time Toru Nakahara, who I would not realize at the time would become present day one of our closest friends and producing partners on the many other Sega projects we're doing together now. And it started with a lunch. We're kind of talked about this idea, and he's like, let's go back to the office. And he brought in colleagues, and it's like, say what you said to me. And we started talking about the idea of a Sonic movie. And ultimately that led to a big meeting that Neil Moritz hosted in his office back in LA, and felt like it went on for hours. Maybe that was my nervous brain hoping that it went well. But in the end, they agreed to give us a shot. And that was the start of about a 10-year journey to get Sonic to the big screen. And then in a cosmic coincidence, we would realize later on, it turned out that the writers who would go on to crack the script that got made, Mike was representing, completely unrelated to us.
Yeah, those sliding door moments are amazing, right?
Yeah. And I mean, again, putting together that trusted village, that writing team, Pat Casey, Josh Miller, we've gone on to work with them on several other projects outside of Sonic. So, you know, again, you find those voices and those teammates who really love and appreciate and get it. And, you know, we try to do more together.
And then you got Jim Carrey, which was to me the perfect casting to that franchise. Are there any franchises that come to mind from what you grew up with that you would really love to get involved with? And I guess why?
The holy grail for me, and I love and appreciate everything Sonic has done. Sonic for me was the gateway drug to get to the one that I really wanted since I was a little one, which was Streets of Rage. Like, I remember playing Streets of Rage 2, that soundtrack just hitting, and even as a kid being like, I'm going to make this a movie one day. And that was the one. And Sega made us earn it before they finally gave us our shot. And we were able to go and put it together, and feeling really good about where it's at right now. So, you know, things keep going the way they're going. We will be talking about Streets of Rage movie in a couple of years.
Mike, is there any ones that you're particularly enamored to or drawn to from, I guess, your experiences, or also when you're playing games, you think, yeah, this would be an amazing adaptation as well?
So partial answers here, Peter. I would say part of our decision-making matrix of what we're going to work on, it's always, as Dmitri has said, like very passion-driven, but it's also marketplace-driven. So we believe that not every game should be adapted. We believe that not every game should be adapted right now. And if we answer the question internally, like, yes, this would be awesome as an adaptation, and yes, now is the time for that adaptation, then it's a question of medium. So there are games that are fantastic, but them moving into film or TV makes us nervous, and we wouldn't personally do it. And then we are very strict about what we go after and what we're going to work on. Is there's only a finite amount of hours in the day and week. So we are always passion driven, and it's hard to put some games above others. Also, we're in the process of some new conversations that we cannot reveal at this moment, which kind of checks some of those boxes. So I can give you a better answer on the follow-up conversation we have hopefully next year. But everything we work on, we are passion driven.
One of the things that I was particularly excited about when obviously we first started talking around about that time, Split Fiction had just come into your gaze, and obviously I'm a huge fan from Hazelight and Joseph Fares from my EA days. I think what they did in regards to It Takes Two and now Split Fiction and even their games prior, I just think they're exceptional storytellers. So yeah, like how did that come about, and yeah, what are your viewpoints in regards to that universe?
First seeing A Way Out was just like, this is incredible. This would be a fantastic film. For reasons I won't dig into right now, it didn't align on that one. But the guys came back and they were like, hey, we're working on our next game. Do you want to check it out? And that ended up being It Takes Two. And we were just absolutely blown away. And really that was the real start to like the relationship that we continue to enjoy. By the way, going back to Pat Casey and Josh Miller, our Sonic writers, we would bring them on board to adapt that for us. And we're very fortunate to have a competitive situation where we had multiple studio offers and ended up setting it up at Amazon. And when the guys started developing Split Fiction, they kept teasing, another few months, we're going to show you something. And then they finally came by the house when they were in town for the Game Awards and showed it to us. And we were like, yes, blown away. But with a very clear directive from Joseph, he is a very clear communicator about what he wants. And what he did not want was just normal studio development. He wanted a package that felt like a movie that could go and get made, which is why we went and put that together in the most apes way possible, bringing on Sydney Sweeney first, who is a big gamer. People don't realize that. She was very excited to go play that with her brother, followed by our writers, Warwick Reese. Obviously he did all the Deadpool movies. And then, when you look at a sci-fi fantasy mashup of that magnitude with two female leads, it's kind of hard to not immediately think of John Chu after what he just did with Wicked. And look, all of these elements from Sydney to Warwick Reese to John Chu on paper felt like long shots, but it's probably the easiest process we had with going to talent of that magnitude, presenting a piece of IP and a vision for what the movie could be, and everyone just getting it and being very excited about the project. And most importantly, Joseph, Oscar, Hazelight were extremely excited about the team and the direction that we were taking the movie. And again, one of those cosmic universal things just kind of came together. And again, we were fortunate to have a lot of interest from the various studios, and we think we found the right studio home for it.
When it comes to world building, is that one of your main advantages in the fact that you can bounce between like Hollywood and also game studios and be that intermediate? And yeah, what do you need in regards to, should a new piece of content be dropped on your desk tomorrow, what would you need right now for it to hook you?
I definitely think that's our advantage over Hollywood. Oftentimes by the time there's a finished product, especially one that's been released and sold X amount of copies, by the time it's now on Hollywood's radar and they come chasing, we've already been there. And part of that is we, with pride, like to say we don't chase heat. We enjoy if it follows us, but that's never the reason we pursue it. So with something like Expedition 33, by the time Hollywood was knocking at their door, we had been there for 2 years. And that's because we weren't looking for necessarily the finished product. We got an early game script. We got concept art. We got, hours of the music that would eventually go into the game. And we're just blown away by the storytelling, these characters, this world. And we don't always necessarily know if it's a film first or a TV series first, but we know it's a world that we want to live in. It's a world that feels unique. And getting movies and TV shows made, it's hard. It's really hard. So for us to live in that space for what could be years, and one of the dirty facts about producers that isn't known unless you're in the business is that we don't get paid until we get a green light. So oftentimes we might be dedicating a decade of our life either making $0 or losing dollars if we're creating assets and different tools out of our own pocket. So for those commitment, for that time commitment, the financial commitment, the sweat equity, we really have to love these things, which is why, if it's not just 100% something that we're passionate about, we have to respectfully pass on it, because a lot of these things, it's so speculative. And again, even the most for sure thing is never for sure in Hollywood.
When it comes to adaptation, so you touched on Expedition 33, and for me, that's one of the best games that have come out in recent years. I just think from a story perspective, it is absolutely incredible, but equally the world that it builds and you play within is just absolutely stunning. So when it comes to adaptations, what do you think about first? Is it character or is it world?
So Sandfall, who the game studio that made and released the game under Kepler as their game publisher, they are art first. They made this amazing game by not compromising on the artistic direction and where they wanted the characters and the grief and the tones of the world to go. And a part of our inclusive nature has been working with Sandfall to unpack what is the most exciting for them as they want to reward the people that have played and enjoyed the game and build upon the universe. And there's so much canon there in and outside the canvas that for them and for us, it's working to match and merge what is exciting to Sandfall and what is exciting to a film or TV partner. So we're actually still working through that process, but it's wildly exciting. The game is superb. The response has been incredible, both from the game audiences as well as from the film and TV buyers and the creative community, the writers, the filmmakers, the showrunners, the actors that have all played the game. So for us, it's a matter of working to answer that question because it's going to be medium specific and it's going to be talent specific. And there's so many different ways to square that.
I'll kind of answer that from my side, which is for me, the types of games that get my attention are things that make me feel. So before we get into the world build, the character driven, it's like, do I leave the experience feeling something? Typically, if the answer is yes, like I flag it for the team, like you guys have to go experience this. One of my go-to examples, because it was so unexpected, was Planet of Lana. Didn't know that studio. We just happened to have our 2-week holiday that Hollywood takes at the last 2 weeks of the year, every year. And I love the art. I love the storytelling. And I got dust in my eyes and felt moved by this indie game from a small studio out of Western Sweden. And it's like water paint kind of art style. I was like, oh my God. And I flagged it for the team and they went and played it and they got dust in their eyes and ended up being Mike's most played soundtrack on Spotify. So when we get that kind of like visceral reaction, that's the kind of thing that like we'll go into CIA mode. We'll track down the rights holder if we don't know them. And like, you have to let us partner on this. We have to do this together. So typically when it's undeniable like that, those are the things that we go after. And then we're very fortunate. A lot of our partners end up being repeat partners where they show us things early in development. We can flag early on, like, yes, that absolutely feels like something we'd be excited about. So it's a fantastic kind of circle of life going for us right now of seeing things from our partners early and pursuing things that really do give us a reaction that we think the world would share with us if we get it out there.
In respect to reaction, what's drawing your gaze at the moment aside from that? Like what are the games or what the movies do you think would be either games to movies or movies to games would work quite well? Like I often talk about The Last of Us. I often talk about Red Dead Redemption because like those games, like you cannot play those games and not have an emotional reaction to the story that's being told. They're still like, I would say probably my North Star in respect to storytelling. Yeah. What's the things that are drawing your gaze at the moment from games to movies, really?
I mean, I would murder to do a Red Dead anything. Like I've always wanted to do a Western. That franchise is my happy place. Like I could just ride around on a horse and just be content. That's where I would have to have an honest conversation with myself and the team. It's like, it's obviously a massive brand, but I'd really have to question, does it need to be adapted? And the honest answer might be no. It might not need to be anything other than what it is.
And I guess it'll also be quite hard with Rockstar because Rockstar are so clinical in regards to the execution from a storytelling perspective. Yeah, as you say, would it elevate that storied world? Like, you know, when you look at things like what I particularly enjoyed recently, well, it's not so recent, but things like Fallout, that adaptation that occurred, I just thought that was beautiful. It wasn't retelling the game, it was inhabiting the world. And I just thought what they did there in and around that was just absolutely fantastic. And yeah, that's always an interesting one. But then there are games like, you know, if you take like a Payday, for example, that game's got so much depth to it. It's got so many different characters. And also the split ending in Payday 2 is really intriguing. And there's a lot of different avenues you could go down there. What would you do with a franchise like that, I guess?
So going to work backwards here. Going to temporarily put a pin in Payday, as we absolutely love that one. But what's funny is while I don't know if I'm rare or not, I definitely prefer Red Dead over GTA just in terms of my own, happy place to be. But I will say this, I can see a clear adaptation of how I would tackle Grand Theft Auto versus a Red Dead. Grand Theft Auto, I would absolutely go series over film. Like, it's a world build. I think it's a world that is an updated kind of version of something like the Warriors that I can absolutely see us finding a super fun way in. I don't think Rockstar necessarily needs it, but if it was ever something interesting, I definitely think there's a way to honor that. And I think the way you honored it and what you said, I could not agree more. Like, I think Fallout and the Cyberpunk anime, which I'm always shocked more people haven't seen it, are two of the best adaptations out there, just because they are their own thing that kind of clearly shares that DNA, lives within that world, but they're their own kind of beast. And I absolutely love both of those. And, it's often not even known that it's based on a game, but obviously Gangs of London is another fantastic adaptation.
Back to Payday in regards to taking a look at that particular one. What would you do there?
You want to take that one, Mike?
I mean, I was still the agent when we were heavily pursuing this. I've been pursuing Payday for a while. They've had different directions they've gone with overall leadership and with their transmedia opportunities and different deals they've struck along the way. I mean, there is an incredible action film franchise baked in there. It would also be a matter of where would the room be to grow, but it just has like such a heist build out. I mean, I feel like it's a live action movie if and when we ever get a chance to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, our fantasy, as big Michael Mann fans growing up, and obviously fans of Heat, which clearly serves as an inspiration for it, was like the opportunity to go and try to figure out our own way to like a Heat style story was always exciting to us. And that would definitely be one of the tonal templates for how we would approach it. What does our version Heat film from the world of Payday look like in 2025, 2026? And use that as a creative jumping point when talking to talent.
Back to the thing about the curse that you touched upon at the beginning in regards to like games being cursed, should they want to make that move to a movie or a series adaptation. We're clearly in a new age looking at, we've mentioned Fallout before, we mentioned The Last of Us. It's arguably changed the conversation. So I guess, like, Mike, firstly, what's your view in regards to this changing landscape? Do you think it's a bubble, a boom, or the beginning?
I think it's the beginning. I think what happened, it's a confluence of things, is gaming was incorrectly thought of as for adolescent boys, and that can be further from the truth. The demo is, I think the average gamer around the world is somewhere in the late 30s. It's almost a 50-50 split between men and women. It transcends all ethnicities. It transcends almost every country. It's a global way to entertain. So I think that who games and where they game has changed. The iPhone was a big help coming out in 07, 08 and opening up mobile gaming and making it frictionless for people that were initially afraid to pick up a controller. So I think gamers are now everywhere and can be every age, race, or creed. I believe that the men and women in positions of power in Hollywood and film and TV entertainment are now our age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, and they came up either gaming or gaming adjacent. So there's not a fear of this type of intellectual property. So it's not like trying to sell a book to a studio president who never learned how to read. Like, they now speak the language. They have the same type of memories of gaming on an NES or on a Sega console. They have a Game Boy experience. They have an Atari experience. So the buyers understand the medium. The medium is enjoyed by almost everyone around the world. And the types of stories that are being told, because we believe that the game developers of today are the newest group of auteurs, just like over the last 20 years, we've seen the television auteurs come up as writer showrunners that are putting these incredible shows on the air at FX and AMC and Netflix and HBO. And before that and during, we've seen these filmmakers come out of Sundance and Toronto and South by Southwest. Now we're seeing these game developers that, as much as you're seeing first-person shooters, you're playing and experiencing stories around sexual assault, around cancer, around grief, around familial death. Like, the stories are being told at such an emotional level and such a deeper character level that it's unbelievably rich IP. And when you juxtapose, and Dmitri touched on this a little earlier, the penetration of the IP, when most New York Times bestsellers start around 5,000 or 10,000 books sold a week, That is nothing compared to the most indie game possible, as long as the indie game is good. Cream rises to the top, and we see these indie games made by 30, made by 15, made by 1 that can sell tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of copies around the world in multiple languages. So there's already an exciting pre-awareness where fans want to see more, experience more. So I believe this is just getting started.
And Dmitri, looking at that from a creative stance, do you think these good adaptations that we've seen of late, do you think it delivered both creatively and commercially? Obviously, there's a lot of indications that it has, but the other point that I wanted to make as well was also about longevity of franchise. When we look at things like Marvel and track through like plus lineage that kind of ultimately led to the thing like Endgame and others, that takes a long period of time to curate. And do you think people have the patience to create similar levels of depth and interwoven storytelling?
I think the answer is yes in success. There's certainly a very ambitious version of that we're undertaking with our partners at Amazon. And, assuming things go the way we hope, I think there will be that level of kind of planning out. I do have sleepless nights sometimes about there being so much of this that it could kill the movement. I think the advantage that we ultimately will have versus like the comic book thing is games, and this is a huge advantage, are not the same genre. Like while they say game adaptations could be drama, it could be sci-fi. And I think because of the diversity of storytelling in games, there's so much we can do and so many different audiences that we can hit. The crowd going to see Minecraft movie, probably not the same crowd that, is watching Fallout. I think that the diversity in the storytelling gives us an opportunity to thrive in a way that, where comic book movies had this peak and then we kind of saw the peak, kind of drop. I think there is that opportunity for longevity, especially as long as we continue treating it like art, putting the best talent around it and not making everything that is available just because some of these games are designed to be a one and done. So I think by nature, the source material is going to determine how much longevity and how much planning out you can do when you're looking at something like an end game.
We've said before in previous conversations on the premise of community, and you both said that it's so inherent and it's baked into the DNA, into how it should and how stories should work and connect with fans. But also, how does that shape your decision making from the story that you want to articulate and tell to even the casting? Because again, like to return to something like a Payday or like a Last of Us, I think problematically in this, especially in this second season, a lot of probably too much similarities to the game in certain aspects, and they opted to choose to follow a particular track rather than cross between Ellie and Abby for good reason. Yeah, I guess like as a consequence of that, there's often some fan fallout. So how much does community and fan base shape your decision surrounding storytelling and casting and the road ahead?
I know you had our attorney Simon Pullman on the pod and you deeply unpacked The Last of Us specifically, but look, that's part of why we are so inclusive with our game developers, as they know their audiences really well. And here's the thing. At the end of the day, we're merging creative and business. So you might not always get it right, but our goal is to pay close attention so that we are rewarding and improving and increasing their engagement and their enjoyment of these stories. Our goal is not to speak down to them. It's not to alienate them. It's never to think that we know better. So that's part of the secret sauce. That we work so closely with Crystal Dynamics on Tomb Raider, as they've been in the Tomb Raider universe. I mean, since the birth of Lady Lara Croft, for us, it's make sure we are surrounded by experts that understand their fans as much as they understand the canon.
From a Tomb Raider perspective, obviously that's been around for so long. I remember it when it first came out. What are your viewpoints in regards to how you could evolve that kind of world as we go forward?
So on the Tomb Raider side, we executive produced the animated Tomb Raider with Netflix, and season 1 was released October of last year of 2024. And soon it will be announced when season 2 will be released, which we're all very excited about. And then separately, we have live action Tomb Raider with Amazon MGM Studios, starting with our live action tentpole series that the wonderful Phoebe Waller-Bridge is our writer showrunner, best known for Killing Eve and Fleabag. And it's been merging her vision and passion as she played the shit out of the games when she was a kid with Crystal Dynamics, with us, with Amazon, and with the fans. And so more will be revealed shortly, but it's been understanding, getting under the hood of who Lara Croft is and who are her world of raiders, and working to tell those stories in a way that's unique and rewarding, but is also fresh. So it's not like you've already played this. This is something new and fun with mystery and puzzles to bear.
Phoebe is incredible. I remember when we first came across Fleabag, my wife drew me into it, and it was just, it was amazing. And she's so talented. Looking out there at the moment from a landscape perspective, is there any directors that you'd like to work with, any actors you'd like to work with, or any games designers and producers that you'd love to work with, and why?
I am on the record. Anything Mr. Christopher Nolan wants to do, just call our people. Call us directly. Mr. Nolan could do no wrong in my eyes, and anything he wants to do, we will make it happen.
And Mike?
We are massive Keanu Reeves fans. In my former life as an agent and before that as a manager, I actually was behind the scenes. I sold the John Wick franchise for us at Story Kitchen, dying to figure out Keanu pathway forward. That is something rad we could do that touches games and a film, a universe build with that incredibly clever artist that has reinvented himself again and again and again.
How did it feel, and how did it come about, that whole John Wick journey? Yeah, for those of us that had maybe just come across it for the first time, it seemed to come out of nowhere, but my God, was it incredible. Yeah, like Keanu's just, to me, he's a huge influence. It's a bit like watching A24 films. If I see Keanu, I'm going to watch it. But like Chris Nolan, if he's directing, I'm watching it. But yeah, how did that come about, really?
Super random. It was put together through an action producer independently. It was independently financed. The movie almost fell apart a few days before production as there was an investor had pulled out and they were short. Eva Longoria famously jumped in and provided a little extra cash, which is why she was an executive producer on John Wick 1. And the movie was shot in New York and New Jersey, and Keanu came in first, and then after Keanu, he picked David Leitch and Chad Stahelski, who had never directed a movie, but had worked with Keanu on multiple movies for stunts, including the Matrix trilogy. And they came on, and the movie was shot. And then the movie was shopped. And nobody wanted the movie. And it was Lionsgate viewed it, I think, for a second time, and said they were going to come in and they would release it quite limited and see how it does. And the movie was received very well. Like, there was almost no marketing spend. The movie was kind of a let's put this out there and see if it finds an audience. And the movie just exploded. And Lionsgate looked like the smartest kids in the room. And quite frankly, they were, as they did acquire the movie. And it's sad, the person who led the charge to acquire the movie, Jason Constantine, unfortunately passed away from cancer 2 weeks ago. But Jason was a believer in the franchise, and it was interesting because as the movie franchise grew to John Wick 2 and John Wick 3, and then the Ballerina and the Continental TD spinoff, it was always bizarre how the acquisitions department of Lionsgate handled it, and not just development, which is typical. Typically, you develop a movie through the development and production department, and then they release the movie. And because it started as an acquisition, it was a roundabout way of happening. But it was in a moment where a lot of those movies were going straight to DVD. And this was thought to be another potential B programmer. And just everything about it caught fire.
From a driving perspective, like you just mentioned the chap that sadly passed away. In that regard, when it comes to lesser known stories, and maybe like even in terms of games, like in indie games, do you think it's better in a system wherein there's a central architect that helps drive that push throughout all different forms of media, or do you think it's actually better to embed a quality team in and around yourself, surrounded, like we've had Russell on the podcast before in regards to like merchandising and stuff that he does. We've had Peter Levin on before. We've mentioned Simon as well, and others. Like, what's your take there? Is it best with a central driver that has a clear vision, or is it best to articulate that around a squad?
I mean, we always try to build our village in a way where I think everyone kind of adds something. But again, speaking purely from the Story Kitchen side, we generally won't involve ourselves unless we do see a clear vision and path for anything we get behind. Like, I remember the mockery around Toys R Us when that we were doing something with that. And we were like, laugh away. We had a very clear vision of what that was. We know it's going to work. And when we announced it, it went viral. And it turned out we weren't the only ones who were excited about what a Toys R Us movie might look like. And that is something that could potentially be laughable if there wasn't, a real creative reason and passion for doing it. So generally for us, that's where it starts. And then as we build out the village, because we are a smaller team, we absolutely look for people who come to the table with their own set of ideas, because we have an idea of a vision doesn't mean it's necessarily 100% correct. So it's a creative conversation, and best idea does win. So people like Russ, Simon, even though he's coming from the legal side, he plays more games than anyone I know. So those are all voices that we trust and absolutely want to hear their thoughts on a lot of the stuff we do.
I spoke to Fabian recently on a previous podcast. He was talking about the evolution of content in regards to, we've almost gone from complex simplicity to simplistic complexity. So today, when 9 times out of 10, you're not just building a show or a movie, you're creating comics, short form, podcast merch. There's a lot of different layering that goes into it. So how do you think about layering in narrative depth beyond the screen?
I think it's a step-by-step process. I think if you try and explore multiple mediums concurrently, it's a nightmare. And we've seen it not work in recent past at Hollywood. There was the King Killer Chronicles that was going to be developed for both a movie and a TV show at the same time. Neither ended up happening. You have to earn your audience. You have to earn the right to take a pre-existing intellectual property and move it into a new medium, or to create something new. Like, you have to put your eggs in the basket of leaving it in the field and making a great movie, making a great TV show, making a great game, creating an awesome graphic novel. And once you've done that and it's found an audience and it works, then working from what you've initially built to expand it. As it would be great to be thinking about Sonic 4 while making Sonic 1, but Sonic 1 had to work. It had to connect. It had to be fun. Had to buy Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik. Like, it had to fit the model of what fans were going to be looking for, and hopefully bring in some new audience members, which then allowed the chance for Sega and Paramount, with all the creative cabal around it, to grow it out further. So it's kind of like that military saying of crawl, walk, run. Like, you got to crawl and exceed with your first medium.
There's also a bit of a catch-22, because we've seen where something becomes a surprise hit, and you can tell when they're trying to reverse engineer a kind of transmedia build around something. So while we understand the general rule that you have to get that first win before you can talk about doing anything else, we generally, and it's core to the company's DNA, we do typically start from a world build perspective, how we could tell stories. Like, if we went film, we could tell this story. If we went TV, we could tell this story. So we do generally have a roadmap, like, already kind of like plotted out, but we would never like go on the record saying this is going to be the next great franchise. But if it does end up connecting with an audience, we do typically have a blueprint for how we can execute and future iterations.
What's your overarching view on platform strategy right now? Because if you look at certain IPs, some potentially are founded or work better across Steam, for example, TikTok and YouTube. I've seen a lot of people that create films that have then subsequently been picked up by Hollywood later. What's your viewpoint in regards to content strategy and platform strategy versus a theater streaming release?
So in terms of being discovered or having something discovered, I feel like use whatever platform you have access to. Like, as a kid in the early 90s with a massive camcorder running around making short films in San Diego, if I had a YouTube that I could have thrown my stuff up on, I absolutely would have. Unfortunately, technology was not there for me to do those things. When I talk to younger creatives, I absolutely encourage them, just get your creative out there. For discovering on our side, I know where my strengths are and where they're not. I'm probably not going to be the guy who goes and finds the next great thing on YouTube. I might be the guy who goes on Steam and finds the next great indie game. That's just where I think my skill set tends to be a little stronger. And then as far as distributing the things that we get behind for film, I'm old school. I still love the theatrical experience, but for some partners, there's more value in eyeballs, where a partner like Netflix is incredible because they're going to get more eyeballs than most. For TV, we feel like streaming, traditional, like, we're open. Whoever the best fit for that particular project is, we'll rally behind.
And what about yourself, Mike?
On the game side, like, look, it's super interesting that games is different from Hollywood, where now you can go B2C. It's not B2B, business to business. You can go business to consumer. We don't really have that on the Hollywood side. Like, we still have to go through a network or go through a streamer or go through a film studio. So Steam and Epic are incredible for allowing especially younger game creators, younger developers, to create something incredible.
I would say yes and no, Mike. You look at someone like Mr. Beast, who obviously could live on YouTube forever and have his audience and the financials and never need to do traditional. Obviously, he did do a deal with Amazon, and again, this is where that's a disconnect for me. I think I'm the old dude when it comes to that, but there are creators who are making tons of money living just on YouTube.
Oh, absolutely. I just meant more for the traditional TV and film. But yeah, I mean, YouTube, TikTok, unbelievable. The penetration, the cultural resonance they create. For me personally, I am with Dmitri. I kind of missed it a little bit. No time on TikTok, some time on YouTube, but going through and looking at what Steam, Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, what has the best fidelity, like finding the games where they are, finding the content where it is. And on the Hollywood side, really everyone is back in theatrical with the exception of Netflix. But Netflix is the most eyeballs with the exception of YouTube. So it's kind of going back to that Matrix a couple minutes ago. Should this be adapted? Should this be adapted right now? And then in what medium? Does Netflix make sense? We've seen extraordinary things happen, like an old USA TV show called Suits go on Netflix and become the #1 show in the world. And then NBC remakes it and nobody watches it. It gets canceled less than 6 months ago. But it did wildly well on Netflix. Or Schitt's Creek that started on a basic cable network that doesn't exist anymore, Pop, and it crushed on Netflix, won a ton of Emmys. You, that started on the Lifetime network that was just announced that it's for sale today, July 8th, that went to Netflix and became like a hit Greg Berlanti show, but nobody saw it on Lifetime. So it's interesting how these case studies unfold. But for us, what is the best fit? Is it an animated movie? Is it a live action series? Is it a drama? Is it a comedy? Is it a new game that we want to adapt? Is it a game from 35 years ago? So we're always trying to work through the different pieces to figure out the most appropriate and exciting way forward.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned before about the element of going to the theatre, but obviously theatre take-ins have been down for quite some time. They've had a lot of turbulence within that industry, but that's not to say there haven't been some great releases. Like I mentioned previously on a podcast that at that time I had just seen 28 Years Later. Honestly, if that doesn't get nominated for Best Picture, something's sorely wrong. But then also I enjoyed Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning as well. I really quite like the fact that Tom Cruise made that call out at the very beginning about this has been made entirely for the theatres and the theatre experience. In your views, I guess collective views, what would you say to theatres now? What would you do in regards to that business model to try and get people from their TVs to the big screen?
It's like the great poet Kevin Costner said, if you build it, they will come.
They will come.
If you put good stuff in the theater, people want to go to the theater. You have so many options at home now between all the streaming services, all the movies. Games are a competitor. There are so many different ways to steal eyeballs that you have to give people a reason to go. And like you, I was there for 28 Years Later, 28 Days Later, one of my favorite movies all time. Add those filmmakers to people would love to work with on anything. So same thing. Even knowing something like a F1 is going to be available on Apple, it's that's something you should see in the theater. So I think you still, that kind of event feeling is what HBO had back with their Monday morning water cooler, where you felt like you had to watch stuff Sunday night or else everyone would be talking about it and you wouldn't be there. I feel like films and that event experience kind of needs to be there. We have a good friend, Eddie Gathigi, who's in the new Superman movie, and we're seeing the reviews coming out and they're positive and strong and there's excitement about a new Superman movie. And that's exciting, even though we have nothing to do with it other than supporting a friend. The fact that people are excited to see not just a superhero movie, but a Superman movie and excited to go to the theater. Plus, it's oh, who's going to win, Jurassic Park or Superman? Those are the glory days that we came up with, where you didn't just have one summer blockbuster. You have multiple where you have to choose who gets your attention on this particular day. I think we're seeing it. I think it's possible. I think you work in the traditional summer blockbusters we grew up with, like the Jurassic Parks, like the superhero stuff. And then you start, adding in the video game adaptations like the Minecrafts, bringing in $1 billion. You'll start to see the movie box office doing a whole lot better.
Yeah. And a push to make theaters nice again. They are still, and they've been upgraded in a lot of the major cities, but in the suburbs and more rural areas, the theater chains have not done an awesome job at staying up to date with their technology, with like the seats and like just making it a great experience so that you want to invest the time and money to get a babysitter if you have kids, to pay for your parking, to buy your tickets, to eat there, to have drinks there. Like understanding that it must be, if not a full event adjacent. If you treat it run of the mill, it's not the 1980s anymore. Like as Dmitri said, there's so many other ways to spend your time, from gaming to streaming to social media to going outside, God forbid, and playing a sport. There's never been more choice. So if you're going to have this special entertainment experience, how do we make it feel special? And it's probably more dynamic pricing. It's better and more comfortable theatrical chains. Maybe it is some type of subscription service that we've seen come and go, and now AMC is doing it again to bring in new habits and remind people how amazing it is to go to the cinema at least once a month, if not a couple times a month. But we've got to work at it, because if we don't, it's so easy. There's so much friction for it not to succeed moving forward and for it to become a dying art, unfortunately, like newspapers or like magazines.
One of the best examples that people want a reason to go to the theater was Five Nights at Freddy's. Like here in the States, at least, you could have watched it for free on Peacock and people still went to the theater to see it. Like there's that idea of community and other fans, and that's the thing that you don't get at home.
It's also like the experience, because if you get the right genre, for example, I think this is probably why 28 Years Later has done so well, because it's kind of that shock and horror. And if you go to a theater versus in your own home, you get a far greater audio experience and far greater visual experience. So there's that. And I think, looking at Friday nights, it's incredible, but equally there's also like, what film did I see a while ago? The Final Destination. Like that drew my nostalgia in there from back in the day. And it also just, it was something that was actually really enjoyable both to go and see at the cinema. So yeah, man, I think there's a lot of different experiences that can be garnered, but I'm with you in regards to the deterioration as well of cinemas. If we bring it up a little bit, offer a more unique experience and make it a little bit more tailored, then yeah, I think there's no reason why people wouldn't go back.
That's a great example. The four of us went opening night, packed theater, everyone. Yeah. And then for those of us old enough to go back to 1999 when we saw the first one, it was like, I remember seeing the first one in the theater, like that sense of community in your group. Again, you can't get that at home.
Yeah, definitely. Like looking at legacy games and franchises, and also like studios that, to me, they feel full of potential, but the resources aren't particularly tapped. I'm going to kind of direct the conversation now towards the likes of BioWare. Obviously, EA's been through a little bit of turbulence, like a lot of gaming studios, and sadly, a lot of great talented people have been let go. Looking at the depth of storytelling roots in the likes of Mass Effect or Dragon Age and others, what are your takes on those franchises? Do you think those worlds are rich with potential, or do you think that kind of narrative thread has passed?
From an EA perspective or from an audience perspective?
An audience perspective, and also from an EA perspective in regards to picking up on that opportunity.
So we'll tread carefully as we work with EA currently, and the games industry is another dissimilar element to Hollywood. It's very NDA facing. Hollywood is very friend DA facing. It is our understanding, first of all, that you work there. It's the biggest video game company in North America, publicly traded company. Market cap is bigger than most entertainment companies, monstrous company. And they have built and nurtured major game franchises over the years and decades. And they've obviously taken some scratches along the way. They are very focused and have been focused on their major franchise brands. Our understanding is that is not just game facing, that is across the board. So if it's a major franchise, it will have the resources and the personnel to support, to grow, and to ideate about the future of those franchises. And some of what you mentioned may be in that bundle, some may not. Obviously, it's not for us to say. Dragon Age had a show on Netflix that went 2-3 seasons. Everything under the hood of that company has opportunity for audiovisual growth for TV and film pathways. It's just going to come down to a matter of appetite and bandwidth for that, for EA. As if the rights holder is not excited or not open to participating at this moment, then it breaks all of our cardinal rules. We're not going to have inclusiveness. We're not going to have support. It's not going to feel good. And the net result is not going to be met with the type of excitement that we would look to do. As Dmitri said up top, the amount of speculative man hours that goes into it on our side, on the Hollywood side, to create and develop and convert any of these IPs into a bona fide film or television production is mammoth, and we need to know that all parties are excited and aligned. So when it comes to a larger, well-known company like EA, the question is, are you excited, and is there a pathway forward on this brand?
To that point, one of my dream projects forever and ever has been Mirror's Edge. That is one that would murder to do something with.
I think Mass Effect for me, or even it's an older one, but it's nothing to do with EA, but like Half-Life. I remember playing Half-Life 2 back in the day. I was like, what is this? Absolutely incredible. Just drew me in, captured me. And, you know, the idea of seeing Gordon on the big screen would be absolutely amazing.
You have great taste. You have great taste.
I feel about StarCraft. Like, I think there could be like a fun story to tell, like through the Terran race, and like do like the human story. Very different from Halo. So not a one for one at all, but there's something really fun to unpack in that Blizzard universe. The question is, now that Microsoft owns Activision Blizzard King, when and if that amazing game franchise is available for an adaptation, and what that could look like that would be supported by the Blizzard Transmedia team. So it's just a matter of like, you got to get the planets to align to do it. And then once the planets align, you can go forth and conquer. Another EA title that we absolutely adore is Plants vs. Zombies. Like, Crazy Dave is Jack Black. Jack Black's Crazy Dave.
I remember going out to Asia to go and take a closer look at the studio behind Plants vs. Zombies. And yeah, I could see that. That would be absolutely amazing.
Is that PopCap?
Yeah.
As an alternative, Crazy Dave could also be Walton Goggins.
Yeah. I want to touch upon a few things just before we kind of start to wrap up. First and foremost is, if we were to zoom out to like 2030, what does success look like for Story Kitchen? And secondly, what games and movies are you most excited for in the coming year or so ahead?
So I'll do 2030, and I'll let Dmitri, you put on your thinking cap for what you're most excited about, and then we'll switch. I would say for 2030, it is the video game adaptation space continues exceeding expectations as it has been since Sonic 1, February of 2020, where not everything can be perfect, but we can be part of the continued momentum to cross over games into Hollywood, and it becomes as usual and as non-clickable as another fantastic book is about to become a TV show, or another classic movie from the 60s is about to be remade into a movie, where it is accepted, it is excited, it is standard. And the video game adaptation space is something that is it's an area that is hitting its stride and is confirmed here to stay. And for us on our side, that we continue getting the opportunity to work with creators, both young and old, that were able to find these awesome indie games where it's a first-time game by a first-time game maker and make a movie or TV show in equal part to continue working with these AAA legends like Sonic, like Tomb Raider, and having the distinct opportunity of making them into movies and TV shows. So it's that we continue to do this, and we're able to do even more.
I'm excited for our friends and partners at Hello Game, excited for the next Planet of Lana game, Shinobi that's dropping in August, more Streets of Rage on the way. If you connect the dots, like everyone else, if we actually get Grand Theft Auto in 2026, I look forward to playing that as well.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you all day, but I just want to say thank you so much.
That was fun. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Peter.